The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass of the bakery window, watching the gray sheets of water transform the city street into a river of forgotten dreams. My reflection stared back at me, dark, hollow eyes, a flour-dusted apron, and long black hair escaping from a fraying braid. I was 18 years old, but I felt like I had lived 30. The smell of burnt sugar hung in the air, mixing with the yeast and desperation that seemed to permeate every corner of the bakery. My hands ached from kneading dough since 4 in the morning, the cuts on my rich, dark skin stinging with each movement. Mrs. Higgins had been in a mood today, throwing pans and cursing when the bread came out too dense. Amara, her shrill voice cut through my thoughts. Table 7 needs service. Move. I grabbed the coffee pot with trembling hands, my stomach growling. I hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon. I couldn't afford to. Not when every penny went toward the shoebox apartment I shared with my aunt. The apartment where she spent most days drowning in bottles, leaving me to cover rent, utilities, and her mounting debts. Table 7 sat in the corner, partially hidden by the ancient espresso machine that wheezed like a dying animal. I approached with my eyes down, the way I'd learned to move through the world, invisible, unthreatening, forgettable. The cup shattered before I even saw him. My hands had been shaking worse than I thought. The porcelain exploded against the marble floor, coffee spreading like a dark stain across the white tiles. I dropped to my knees immediately, my heart hammering, already calculating how much Mrs. Higgins would dock from my pay. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry," I whispered, gathering the shards with my bare hands. A jagged piece sliced my palm, and I watched blood well up, mixing with the spilled coffee against my skin. "Stop." The voice froze me mid-motion. It was deep, commanding, with an edge that made every nerve in my body stand at attention. I'd heard that tone before from men who expected obedience, who didn't ask twice. Slowly, I looked up. He sat within a stillness that seemed impossible for someone so young, mid-20s at most, but his dark eyes held centuries of shadows. He was undeniably striking, with sharp, angular features and jet-black hair pushed back from a face that could have been carved from marble. He wore a perfectly tailored black Mafia suit with a crisp white collared shirt that accentuated his broad shoulders. He was beautiful in a way that felt dangerous. But it was his eyes that trapped me. They weren't looking at my face. They were fixed on my bleeding hand with an intensity that made my breath catch. 2 men stood behind him, massive and silent, their hands clasped in front of them in a way that suggested they were hiding weapons. The other customers had gone quiet. Even Mrs. Higgins had stopped her constant muttering. "You're hurt," he said. It sounded like an accusation. "It's nothing, sir. I'll clean this up and bring you." "Look at me." I did. I couldn't help it. His gaze pulled at something deep inside me, something I didn't understand. His jaw was clenched, a muscle ticking in his cheek. He was angry, but not at the mess. The emotion rolling off him felt too big, too complex for a simple accident. "Jean," he said, not breaking eye contact with me. "First aid kit. Now." One of the men behind him moved immediately, disappearing through the bakery's front door into the rain. The other remained, a wall of muscle and threat. "Sir, really, I'm fine. What's your name?" My throat felt tight. Something about him demanded truth, made lying impossible.
Amara.
Amara Vance. He repeated it slowly, like he was tasting each syllable. Amara. Then his eyes finally released mine, traveling over my flour-covered apron, my worn sneakers, and the bruise on my wrist from where I'd bumped the industrial mixer. His expression darkened with each detail. "How old are you?" 18. The word came out as barely a whisper. Something flickered across his face, satisfaction mixed with something that looked almost like pain. He leaned back, and I noticed his hands were gripping the armrests of his chair hard enough that his knuckles had gone white. The man, Jean, returned with a leather case that looked far too expensive to be a simple first aid kit. But it wasn't Jean who opened it. The man in the suit stood, unfolding to his full height, and suddenly the bakery felt too small. He was tall, broad-shouldered, radiating a presence that made me want to simultaneously run toward him and away from him. He stepped over the broken cup like it didn't exist and reached for my hand. Let me help you, it wasn't a request. His fingers wrapped around my wrist, gentle but absolutely firm, and the touch sent electricity racing up my arm. His hands were warm, slightly rough, and completely steady as he turned my palm up to examine the cut against my dark skin. I'd never been this close to someone like him. He smelled like expensive cologne, sandalwood, and something darker, more mysterious, like smoke and secrets. This needs stitches. His voice had gone cold. I can't afford. Ho Suk, he snapped his fingers, and the second man stepped forward. Call Dr. Park. Tell him to come to the estate immediately. The estate? My voice cracked.
No, sir.
I have to work. Mrs. Higgins will. Mrs. Higgins, he finally looked away from me, his gaze landing on my employer who had emerged from the kitchen. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. This girl is injured on your premises. Explain to me why she was working with equipment while clearly exhausted. Mrs. Higgins's face went pale. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. Mr. Kong, I didn't realize.
Kong.
The name hit me like a physical blow. Everyone in the city knew that name.
Seoyun Kong.
He was the head of the Korean Mafia, the syndicate that ran K-Town and half the city's underground. They ran politics, police, and entire neighborhoods. They were the kind of power that made governments nervous. And I just bled on the leader of the Korean Mafia. How much does she owe you? He asked Mrs. Higgins, still holding my hand like it was something precious. Nothing. She owes nothing. In fact, her pay. I'm not asking about her pay. I'm asking about her debt. Her aunt's debt. The world tilted. How did he know about Aunt Tyra's gambling debts? About the loan sharks who showed up monthly taking whatever we had? Mrs. Higgins's eyes darted to me, then back to him. I don't know what you... Gene, he didn't raise his voice, but the man behind him pulled out a phone and began typing with disturbing efficiency. Find out exactly what the Vance family owes and to whom. I want names and amounts within the hour. No, the word burst from me before I could stop it. Please, you don't understand those men. If you interfere... He finally looked back at me, and the intensity in his gaze nearly knocked me backward. Those men work for me, Amara. Everything in this city works for me. The first aid kit lay forgotten on the table. He was still holding my hand, his thumb now brushing across my knuckles in a gesture that felt almost unconscious. Possessive. I don't understand. I managed to say. You will. He pulled a pristine white handkerchief from his pocket and wrapped it around my bleeding palm with surprising gentleness. You're coming with me. I can't. My shift isn't over. He turned to Mrs. Higgins. She no longer works here. You'll prepare her final check with 2 months severance and have it ready within the hour, or I'll have the health department here by lunch. Am I clear? Mrs. Higgins nodded frantically. Panic clawed at my chest. I needed this job. I needed the money, the routine, the invisibility it provided. Please, Mr. Kong, I need to work. If you're trying to help, I appreciate it, but... I'm not trying to help. His hand slid from my wrist to my elbow, steadying me as I tried to stand. I'm telling you what's going to happen. You're going to come with me to get that hand properly treated. Then, we're going to discuss the terms of your employment with me. Employment? Did you think I would let you go back to this? He gestured around the dingy bakery with something close to disgust. Working yourself to exhaustion for pennies, bleeding and apologizing for existing. The other customers were staring now, whispering behind their hands. One of them had a phone out, probably already spreading the news that the Korean Mafia boss had walked into the bakery and left with a girl. I don't even know you, I whispered. Something like pain flashed across his face again, so quick I almost missed it. No, he said softly. You don't. But I know you, Amara. I've always known you. Before I could process that bizarre statement, he was guiding me toward the door, his hand still on my elbow. The 2 men fell into formation around us, one ahead, one behind. Protection or prison? I couldn't tell which. The rain hit my face as we stepped outside, but I barely felt it. A black SUV idled at the curb, sleek and menacing, windows tinted so dark they looked like pools of oil. The door was already open, and I could see leather seats and an interior that smelled like luxury. Please, I tried one more time. I don't understand what's happening. He helped me into the vehicle with a hand on my lower back, the touch burning through my thin uniform. Then he slid in beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. The door closed with a heavy thunk that sounded like finality. You don't need to understand yet. The SUV began to move, and I watched the bakery disappear behind sheets of rain. All you need to know is that you're safe now. You'll never have to worry about money again. Never have to apologize for taking up space. Never have to bleed alone in some filthy bakery. But why? My voice broke. Why would you do this for a stranger? He turned to face me fully in the dim interior of the vehicle. His features looked almost inhuman, too perfect, too intense, carved from shadows and obsession. His hand came up, fingers brushing my cheek, so gently it felt like a prayer. Because, he said, each word heavy with meaning I couldn't decipher. You were never a stranger to me, Amara. You were always mine. You just didn't know it yet. The city blurred past the windows, rain making everything look like a watercolor painting washing away. As Seo Jun Kang's thumb traced the line of my jaw with devastating gentleness, I realized that whatever had just begun in that bakery, whatever agreement I'd walked into without agreeing to anything, there would be no walking away from it. From him. The SUV turned onto a private road I'd never seen before, heading toward a part of the city where people like me didn't belong. And the Korean Mafia boss beside me watched me with eyes that held secrets, obsession, and something that looked dangerously close to devotion. I was terrified, but more terrifying was the small, desperate part of me that felt, for the first time in years, like maybe I was going home. The estate emerged from the rain like something out of a dark fairy tale. Wrought iron gates swung open automatically as we approached, revealing a driveway lined with ancient trees that seemed to whisper warnings. The mansion itself was a sprawling testament to old money and brutal power. 3 stories of stone and glass, a blend of modern architecture and fortress-like security. My breathing had gone shallow. The handkerchief around my hand was soaked through with blood now, a crimson bloom against the white fabric. Seo Jun hadn't said another word during the drive, but his presence beside me felt like a living thing, aware and watchful. The SUV stopped beneath a covered portico. Before I could reach for the door handle, Jean had it open, offering his hand. I took it carefully, my legs shaking as I stepped out into air that smelled like rain and manicured gardens. This way, Miss Vance. Jin's voice was surprisingly gentle for someone built like a tank. Seo Jun appeared at my other side, his hand finding the small of my back again. That proprietary touch that made my skin burn even through my uniform. The doctor is already here, he said, guiding me up steps that probably cost more than my entire apartment building. The entrance hall stole what little breath I had left. It was minimalist and grand, with polished floors that reflected the crystal chandeliers overhead. Everything gleamed, the floors, the mirrors, the small fortune and artwork lining the walls. This wasn't just wealth. This was a dynasty. Seo Jun, a woman's voice echoed from above, sharp with concern. I looked up to see an elegant figure descending the stairs. Her silver-streaked hair was swept into a perfect chignon, and she wore a silk dress that probably required a staff to maintain. Despite her age, she moved with a grace that spoke of discipline and authority. Mother, Seo Jun's tone shifted, becoming almost careful. This isn't a good time. So I've heard. Her dark eyes, so like her son's, landed on me. I watched her expression cycle through surprise, calculation, and something that looked almost like recognition. You brought a girl home. The girl, if the rumors from town are to be believed. Dr. Park is waiting in the study, Seo Jun said, his hand pressing more firmly against my back, not moving me forward, but holding me close, shielding me. Madame Kong descended the last few steps, her gaze never leaving my face. She was beautiful in a severe way. She's bleeding on my floor. I looked down in horror. Sure enough, drops of blood had fallen from my wrapped hand, creating a trail of crimson across the pristine floor. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean. Stop apologizing, Seo Jun's voice cut through my panic. Mother, this is Amara Vance. Amara, my mother, Madame Kong. You'll become acquainted later. Right now, she needs medical attention. Vance. Madame Kong repeated the name like she was placing it in a file cabinet in her mind. The daughter of. Later, something dangerous edged Seo Jun's tone. His mother heard it too because she stepped aside, though her eyes continued tracking me as we passed. The study was lined with dark wood and leather books from floor to ceiling. A fire crackled in a massive fireplace. An elderly Korean man with wire-rimmed glasses and a doctor's bag stood waiting. Dr. Park, thank you for coming. Seo Jun finally released me, but only to guide me toward a leather chair positioned near the fire. Of course, Mr. Kong, the doctor approached with confidence. Now, let's see what we have here. Seo Jun remained standing beside my chair, so close that I could feel the fabric of his trousers brush against my shoulder. As Dr. Park unwrapped the blood-soaked handkerchief, I saw Seo Jun's jaw clench. It's not as bad as it looks, the doctor said after a moment, gently probing the wound. I winced, and Seo Jun's hand immediately came to rest on my shoulder. Heavy, warm, grounding. A few stitches should do it. The cut is clean. I'll need to numb the area. I nodded, trying to focus on anything but the man standing over me. But my awareness kept returning to Seo Jun's hand on my shoulder, his thumb now moving in small circles against my collarbone. How long has she been working at that bakery? He asked Dr. Park, though he was still looking at me. Mr. Kong, she has old burn scars on her forearms, defensive wounds on her hands. She's underweight. Probably hasn't eaten properly in weeks. He cataloged my failures like evidence in a trial. When was the last time you had a full meal, Amara? The question caught me off guard. Yesterday. Lunch. Yesterday, he repeated it flatly. It's nearly 6 p.m. You've worked since 4 a.m. on an empty stomach. Jean, Seo Jun said without turning. Have the kitchen prepare a full meal, traditional Korean porridge, something warm, nutritious, and bring it to the East Wing guest suite. The East Wing. Dr. Park's hands paused for just a moment. That's quite close to the family quarters. I'm aware Seo Jun's tone suggested the conversation was over. Mr. Kong, I tried again, my voice sounding small. I appreciate the medical attention, truly, but I should go home. My aunt will be worried, and I have to find another job. Your aunt is currently passed out on her couch with 2 empty bottles. She won't notice you're gone. He said it without cruelty, just stated it as fact. And you won't need another job. You'll be working here. Here? I looked around the study. Doing what? Whatever I need you to do. He finally moved, circling around the chair to crouch in front of me, bringing his face level with mine. Up close, I could see the perfection of his skin, the intense depth of his dark eyes. You'll live here in the East Wing. You'll have your own suite, your own staff. Your aunt's debts will be cleared. You'll want for nothing. My heart was hammering so hard I was certain he could hear it. That sounds like a prison. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Or salvation. Dr. Park finished stitching and wrapped my hand in gauze. Seo Jun walked the doctor to the door, their voices dropping to a murmur. When he returned, he poured an amber liquid into 2 glasses. I don't drink, I said. It's brandy. It'll help with the shock. He pressed one into my good hand, then sat in the chair across from me. Drink, Amara. I took a small sip, and the liquid burned down my throat. Why are you doing this? The question came out steadier than I felt. You don't know me. But I do, he set his glass down. I've known you since you were 14 years old, Amara. Since the day you moved into that apartment with your aunt. Ice flooded my veins. How do you? I was 21, already running parts of the syndicate, learning how to be the man everyone expected me to become. His eyes never left mine. I saw you at the market on 3rd Street. You were buying the cheapest brands, counting coins. You wore a jacket 3 sizes too big, and you kept apologizing to everyone. The memory hit me like a wave. You watched me buy groceries? I watched you survive. He reached across the space between us, his fingers finding my uninjured hand. I watched you for 4 years, Amara. Watched you work yourself sick. Watched you give everything to an aunt who gave nothing back. Watched you fade a little more each day. That's obsession. Yes, it is. He didn't deny it. I'm not going to lie to you. I've been obsessed with you since the moment I saw you. But you're here now.
18.
Finally legal. Finally mine to protect. The implications crashed over me. You waited for me to turn 18? I waited for you to be old enough that no one could question my claim. He said it without shame. I've eliminated every man who looked at you wrong. Paid off debts you didn't know existed. The loan sharks who stopped coming last year?
Mine.
The landlord who didn't raise your rent? I own the building. I should have been screaming. But the desperate, exhausted part of me wanted to sink into the life he was offering. This is crazy, I whispered. Yes, he brought my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles. But you're not going to leave. You're just as tired of surviving as I am of watching you suffer. What happens now? Now. He stood, pulling me up with him. Now I show you to your room. You eat, you rest. Tomorrow we'll discuss the details of your new position here. And what position is that? He smiled, and it transformed his face from merely beautiful to absolutely devastating. My wife. The world tilted. What? You'll marry me, Amara. Willingly or not, you'll marry me, he began leading me toward the door. But I'm hoping for willingly. I've waited for years. I can wait a few more weeks for you to understand that this is where you belong. My legs moved automatically. Marriage to a Korean mafia boss I'd met hours ago. A man who looked at me like I was oxygen. He led me to the third floor, to a suite that made my entire apartment look like a closet. Four-poster bed, silk sheets, floor-to-ceiling windows. This is yours, he said. The clothes in the closet, I had them prepared in your size. The door locks from the inside. I won't enter without your permission. I turned to face him, and if I'm never ready. Something dark flickered across his expression. Then I'll wait. I'm a patient man, Amara. But make no mistake, you are mine. He started to leave, then paused. Your dinner will arrive in 20 minutes.
Get some rest.
Seo Jun, I said, testing his name. He went still. This is kidnapping. No, he turned back, his eyes pure possession. This is rescue. You just don't know it yet. 3 weeks later, I stood in front of a mirror in the master suite. Seo Jun had insisted I move in after the engagement. The dress was ivory silk, hand-embroidered, fitted to my body like a second skin. My long black hair was styled in cascading waves. I looked like a princess, or perhaps a queen of the underworld. The past 3 weeks had been a blur. We had visited my aunt, a confrontation that ended with Seo Jun paying her off and severing my ties to the toxicity that had bound me. I had signed a marriage contract that gave me millions if we divorced, though Seo Jun had made it clear divorce wasn't an option. You look beautiful, the head seamstress said. I changed back into casual clothes and went downstairs. Seo Jun was in his study, wearing his signature black Mafia suit and white shirt. When he saw me, he hung up the phone. Everything all right with the dress? He asked. Perfect. He walked around the desk and pulled a velvet box from a drawer. Inside lay a necklace of diamonds and sapphires. It was my grandmother's. She wore it on her wedding day. He fastened it around my neck. The weight of it felt like a collar, beautiful, binding. Amara, he said, his hands resting on my shoulders. I know this is fast, but I promise to spend every day trying to make you happy. And if you fail, then I'll try harder. That night, dinner was tense. Madame Kong picked at her food. Seo Jun was distracted. There's been a complication, he said finally. The Rossi syndicate is making noise about territory. I need to handle something tonight. What kind of complication? Madame Kong asked. Nothing I can't handle, he looked at me. I'll be back by morning. He left with a convoy of SUVs. I watched from the window, the necklace still cold against my throat. I went to sleep afraid, not of him, but for him. A crash woke me at 3 a.m. I ran to the landing. In the entrance hall, Seo Jun stood in the center, his white shirt soaked with blood. Jean and Ho-suk were flanking him. On the pristine marble floor lay a man, unconscious and beaten.
Sam.
I ran down the stairs. Are you hurt? Not mine, he said, his voice flat. He looked at the man on the floor, then back at me. His eyes were empty, the eyes of the mafia boss everyone feared. The Rossies sent him to spy, he said quietly. He was taking photos of the house. Of your window. Ice flooded my veins. He won't be taking any more photos. Seo Jun's arm came around me, pulling me against his bloody shirt. I'm a monster, Amara. I do terrible things to protect what's mine. This is who I really am. I looked up at him. I know who you are. I've always known. And I realized it was true. Somewhere between the bakery and now, between the obsession and the devotion, I'd stopped seeing the cage and started seeing the man.
Go upstairs, he said.
I'll come to you when I'm done. When he came to the bedroom an hour later, he was showered, his hair damp.
He pulled me against his chest.
I would burn this city down before I let anyone hurt you, he whispered. Does that terrify you? Yes, I admitted. But it also makes me feel safer than I've ever felt. Say you'll marry me, he said. Not because of the contract. Because you want this. I looked at him. Really looked. I'll marry you. Because I want to. The wedding was 2 days later. 300 guests filled the gardens. I walked down the aisle alone, my choice. Seo Jun waited at the altar, looking devastating in his tuxedo. When I reached him, he whispered, "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." We exchanged vows. The priest said, "You may kiss the bride." Seo Jun kissed me like I was air, and he was drowning. Mine, he breathed. Finally, completely mine. Yours, I agreed. Always yours. 6 months later, I sat in my library, the winter sun streaming through the windows. I was Amara Kong now, wife to a Korean mafia boss, queen of a criminal empire. The door opened and Seo Jun entered, wearing his black suit. He crossed the room to kiss me. Hello, wife. Hello, husband. He sat beside me. Are you happy? You ask me that every week, and I'll keep asking. I cupped his face. I'm happy.
I'm loved.
I'm home. He rested his forehead against mine. I don't deserve you. Good thing I don't care about deserve. Outside, snow began to fall. Inside, I felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the fireplace. I had been drowning in that bakery, invisible and dying by inches. Seo Jun had pulled me from the depths, given me air, given me a love so consuming it bordered on madness. Sometimes the cage was really salvation wearing a different face. I was home.